All right, so our webinar is now live. We're going to see some people start to filter in. Oh, I see Shalimar and Kent and Jason and Annette and Alicia, Leah. Oh man, this is a great group of people. So everybody, what we're doing now is we're just sort of letting all of the attendees filter in. It'll take us a couple minutes, so I'm going to just awkwardly talk for a little while, and then I want to talk about our sponsors, and then I'll introduce Keith and Sharon and let them take it away. I want to thank everybody for attending the MountainMoot. The greatest thing, what we love most about the MountainMoot is far and away the community. And it's one of those things that year after year, you know, I meet new people. I get to see folks that I've got significant relationships with, you know, professional relationships, and it's just an absolute pleasure to be with you and to have you be part of the mood. So I want to thank all of you for that, and I want to, let's see, we're going to get Dan Case here in a second. I'm sure he'll want to say something. But I want to remind everybody, take this opportunity to remind everybody about the social events that we have tonight. You've probably seen we're giving away Moot Coin. We've got a whole bunch of great prizes. I want to give you a quick demo of that in a second, but I want Dan to show up here because he is really the founder of the feast, as it were, Mr. MountainMoot himself. Dan Case, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Excited about the turnout that we've had this year. So sorry we had to kind of do this virtually again. But we're hoping to do this in person next year. And we hope that a lot of you people can make it to beautiful Montana next year and join us on campus. What many attendees refer to as an adult summer camp. But it's just a lot of fun. We do a lot of events, kind of social events after hours. And I think that's where a lot of the cooperation and learning really happens, and collaboration. So great.
All right. So I wanted to show everybody, in case you're new to the MountainMoot and you haven't gotten involved in the whole Moot Coin, Moot Bucks extravaganza. We've been at it for, I don't know, several years. And we're using a tool called Motivated to reward you for positive activity in Moodle. So every time you're posting your session evaluations, you're getting some coins. We've been giving away coins for great stuff on Twitter. So really get out there on Twitter and tweet great things that you hear from your conferences. I'm going to be going around and giving out Moot coins for that. And here's why you want Moot coins. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is the MountainMoot. You'll notice we've got this collapsible and openable bar over here using the screen arrow. And then you've got your coins up here. Now, I have 0 coins because I am not eligible for this because I'm, you know, in charge of it. But you are getting coins. And when you open the store, you can see some of the things that you can buy, right? So we've got here 3 different ways that you can spend your coins on things. So we've got a raffle here, for example, this Anchor Power Strip that you can put in to get for 5 coins, a mere 5 coins. You too can have a chance to win this Anchor Power Strip. We also have auctions. For example, Smash Ball is something that I've been into lately. So currently at 15, if I wanted to bid on that, I can go in here and place a bid, assuming that I have the points. And then finally, there are some items that are just available for purchase. For example, this Wemo Home Starter Kit is 4,000 coins. You can buy it right then. So we've got a lot of great stuff. But I want to point out the featured auction is a life-size Smokey the Bear cardboard cutout. So this is for real, 6 feet tall, and this is a hot item this year. And especially because we're in the midst of a pretty extreme fire season out here, I want to sort of help bring your awareness to responsible stewardship of America's forests. So we need Smoky now more than ever, I think. So in any case, go look in the store, spend your coins on getting in on some of these auctions. And yeah, so that's how it works. There's great stuff in there. And then I want to point out our two sponsors for this session are OpenLMS and Our Original. OpenLMS is a hosting provider for Moodle, and you can get in touch with them. There's a lot of OpenLMS folks that are presenting. We want to thank them for their generous sponsorship, and also I want to thank Our Original for their sponsorship as well. They are a plagiarism checking service. Well, more than just a plagiarism checking service. They have the ability to look for farmed out papers, contract papers, as it were, in addition to your basic plagiarism check. So we want to thank both Original and OpenLMS for sponsoring the Mood in general and this talk in particular. Okay, Dan, do you have anything else you want to say before I turn it over to Sharon and Keith?
I don't. Sharon and Keith, do you want to just kind of quickly introduce yourselves and we can kind of go from there? Sorry. Thanks.
All right, Sharon, take it over. I'm gonna mute myself and stuff and let you have the floor.
Awesome. That's great. I'm actually going to share my screen so that we can get right into this. And I'm Sharon Lauricella. I'm a professor of communication and digital media studies here in Canada. And I'm here with my esteemed colleague. Would you like to introduce your fine self, dear?
I'm Keith, the aforementioned esteemed colleague.
And he's in Manitoba, which is a lot closer to you than I am. But I mean, we're all online, so we're all in the same place. So I want to thank Dan, especially for inviting us into this whole wonderful community, and to Ryan for all the amazing work that you both have done in organizing such a fun and vibrant conference. And I'm super excited. I've already put MountainMoot 2022 in my July calendar for next year. So I'm pretty pumped about going to Montana and chilling in the mountains and doing all the things. So this is just a mere prelude to the excellence that will happen next summer. And, you know, technology is such a big part of this conference. And I wanted to mention that it's really technology that brought Keith and I together. We met on Twitter. We don't live anywhere near each other. We do not have really much kind of overlap in terms of, you know, sort of different cultures that we travel in. And we met on Twitter, and we only met face to face a couple of weeks ago, earlier this month. So we are kind of like living proof that technology brings fun people together. And clearly this conference is a great fit because that's really your mission as well, to bring fun people together and do fun stuff online and, you know, with your teaching and then hanging out together. So we're going to talk today about our theory, our pedagogical model of ludic pedagogy. So Keith is going to start with a general intro to that.
All right, thanks, Sharon. To start, I want to give you an idea of where we're coming from. Both of us work in higher education, so that's how we frame things in this talk. But this ludic pedagogy is not only a higher ed thing; it can be applied in any setting. So our model, ludic pedagogy, is really built on 4 pillars: fun, play, playfulness, and humor. Now, I recognize that the grand theme of the conference here is Moodle, but this model is not a prescriptive model. We're not going to give you a recipe that needs to be followed. Instead, we're going to give you a bunch of ingredients, well, 4 ingredients to be precise, for you to experiment with it and find the right flavor that best suits you in your situation. So this pedagogical model will work in a Moodle environment. It'll work in a face-to-face environment. It's going to work in any teaching and learning environment that you might be in. Now, a little bit more about the overview of this model is that it's designed to reintroduce the joy of discovery into learning. There seem to be some camps that are of the idea that student engagement and positivity are acceptable casualties when we're trying to maintain academic rigor in the classroom. But our Ludic pedagogy model shows that this isn't necessary. Fun and play and playfulness and humor are not incompatible with learning, right? In fact, we hope over the next few minutes here that we're going to be able to convince you that they in fact enhance learning for students and can make teaching more enjoyable as well. Now, this isn't really a radical idea. We're all familiar with these key ideas in an educational context. Fun and play tend to be the default setting for our earliest formal education experiences. However, as we progress through our formal education, little by little, these ludic elements of fun and play are stripped away to the point in higher education where these concepts, at least within a classroom setting, are relatively rare, if not entirely non-existent. Sharon, can you change the slide for me, please? Thanks. Now,
Okay.
You're doing this one, are you?
I'm doing this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless you want to.
No,
Hey,
go.
yeah,
We're well rehearsed, obviously.
we are well rehearsed. So we know that students are extrinsically motivated. We know that, if you ask any undergrad student, why are you going to university? Well, I want to get a good job. What else do you want? I want to get good grades, right? I want to get a good job. I want to get into grad school. It's all these external motivations. And some of this conversation has led to the ungrading movement, which is some of the stuff that I do with, not assigning grades to students, but giving them extensive feedback. So that's a whole other presentation that we can do for your next summer. But generally speaking, students think that classes, like going to the class, is like the necessary evil that they have to do in order to go do the fun stuff, like the Thirsty Thursdays, the keggers, the the stuff all on the weekends and whatever. So, the fun stuff in university tends to be things that are outside the classroom. And Keith and I were talking about this. We were saying, well, what if we make classes more fun, and then students are intrinsically motivated to come to class? Like, I want to go to class, it's fun. Students have said that to me. I love your class, it's fun. I always want to go. I don't want to miss it. And if we can make our courses intrinsically motivating by being fun, we can demonstrate that learning is fun. And then maybe students will then take that mindset further, and then work can be fun. And then we've changed the world, right? So, it's all a very, it's all a very simple process, clearly. But this one is yours, Keith.
Thank you. Now, Sharon's mentioned fun already, but if you start doing the academic thing, fun is a tough concept to define, right? So if we do some hand waving and speak very generally, fun is something that someone does because they want to do it and because it makes them feel good. So that means that fun is entirely subjective. So when we're trying to incorporate fun into the classroom, you need to understand that what is fun is different from person to person. It's different from student to student. You can't force someone to have fun, right? You can't make mandatory fun, right? You can instead only create the conditions in which students are likely to experience it. But the point really then is, why bother? Other than as maybe an intrinsic motivator, as Sharon suggests, what value does fun have in the classroom? Well, I'm glad you asked. Research shows that fun can lighten the cognitive load of an individual, which leads to better learning. It can also improve student engagement with the class. If students enjoy their classes, as Sharon mentioned, they're more likely to engage in those classroom activities that lead to better and deeper understanding. of the course content, as well as leads to greater retention of those same concepts. In addition, fun also helps develop social bonds. It helps create those social connections that are essential to students having a positive undergraduate experience. Now, in our Ludic pedagogy model, the idea of fun isn't a standalone concept, right? It's not a single pillar separate from the other three that I mentioned, right? It depends on and feeds into those other three elements: play, fun, oh, sorry, I'm talking about fun, play, humor, and playfulness. Now, I know I turn it back to Sharon.
That is true. That's what happens now. So, you know, here we are all in this conference and your phones are burning a hole in your pockets or your desk or your placemat or wherever you are. So I'm going to ask you to take out your phones. Take out your tablet or your cell phone or whatever. And we're just going to start having some fun. So I start my classes with a kind of a fun intro every week. It really just kind of sets the tone for how the class goes. It's always in the first couple minutes, we get some little fun activity. So take out your phone, go to this website. I'll also put it in the chat.
It's already there.
Oh, it's in there? Oh, smart man, thank you.
Well, that's Dan, don't thank me.
Oh, thanks, Dan. So if you go to that straw poll, I'm asking you, which dog are you today? At this very moment, which dog are you? I'm going to refresh this. Okay, so we have lots of dog number one, which is the one in the blanket. That's fabulous. So we can see people's responses coming in. This is great. So this is just kind of a fun activity that you can do. You don't have to do it with a meme like this that's, you know, how are you feeling today or whatever, but I started my classes with this how are you feeling today meme thing. And if you just Google how are you feeling today meme, you'll see, you know, there's like dog ones, cat ones, dolphin ones, like whatever. And then the very last class I did was this, there's a groundhog cake that's on Pinterest that people have tried to do, or a hedgehog cake. It's a hedgehog. If you type in hedgehog cake, Pinterest fails, and it's terrifying. So that was, I wouldn't recommend using that with a new group of people, but if you start with something fairly benign, like the dog one, it's just nice to kind of build rapport and just set the tone for what your class is going to be like. So I'm going to come back to our doing the awkward professor thing and going back to just doing the awkward, okay, can everyone see my screen? So most people were dog number one. Here we are all at home. It's been 16 months. Oh my goodness. And I mean, my kid just went to go get her second COVID vaccine. So we're a little bit further behind you here in Canada. So we'll move on. The fun part is just setting the tone, right? Like you can use all kinds of different tools to do this, but the question really is, how are you making your space a fun place for students to show up at every week, whether it's online, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, whether it's face-to-face or whatever? How are you making that fun instead of stressful and so on? So in some ways, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but you know, new ideas are always great. So Keith's going to talk to us about humor and how we incorporate that into our classes.
First, I just want to apologize for my doorbell ringing. My doorbell hasn't rung in 6 months. And of course, it's during this hour that it has to ring. I suspect it's my MountainMoot loot bag showing up. I'll find out later. So humor is the second pillar in Ludic pedagogy. In our model, we use the term humor to describe both humorousness and positive affect, the idea of being in good humor. So if fun is the intrinsic motivator, humor is the attitude. And there's a whole wealth of research regarding the impact of humor on learning. It facilitates learning, it attracts and retains student attention, it develops and maintains a positive reputation of the instructor, it builds and maintains a positive relationship between the instructor and the students, it creates a pleasant learning environment, it creates positive attitudes, it creates positive affect towards the learning process. Really, I don't think there's anything that humor can't do. Now, that said, all of these benefits are predicated on the fact that the humor used needs to be both relevant and appropriate. It needs to be relevant so that the humor doesn't disrupt the ongoing learning process. For example, if you're teaching advanced calculus, and in the middle of doing this advanced calculus, whatever you do in advanced calculus, you decide to tell the students a knock-knock joke, right? You're going to disrupt that learning process. So the humor needs to be relevant, and I'll give you an example here in a moment. Humor also needs to be appropriate, and I'll explain why by discussing the reverse. Inappropriate humor, so talking about sexual behavior, for example, or mean-spirited targeting of specific groups, that kind of inappropriate humor will negate many, if not all, of those benefits that I just mentioned. Again, referring to Sharon and I's context of post-secondary education, the entirety of post-secondary education is just about a stressor, right? Students come to class stressed out not only about having to learn all the material you're presenting to them, but also the stresses of their other classes, social stresses, relationship stresses, financial stresses, and on and on and on. All right. And so this leads to perhaps one of the most important benefits of humor. It reduces stress. Now, related to this idea of reducing stress, because humor does reduce stress, it provides a bit of a cognitive reprieve that improves students' ability to process information. And that allows them to gain a better understanding of course material. So let me say that another way. If you use relevant and appropriate humor, you're in fact helping students learn better. Sharon, the next slide is mine as well. So could you please? I have no idea where Sharon dug up this picture or who it is, in fact. But I want to give you an example of relevant humor. And it's a very specific example. In the past, in my teaching, I've had trouble with students remembering the concept of duty to accommodate. And now, if you're not familiar, that's the idea that employers are required to meet the needs of employees, needs that arise from their membership in a protected category, physical disability, for example. Now, because this concept is new to most students, the terminology of duty to accommodate in the past was very difficult for them to remember. So I just tweaked how I present this concept. So now when I introduce the idea of duty to accommodate, I snigger and go, duty. Yes, it's childish. Yes, it's lowbrow, but it's significantly improved students' ability to remember the term, right? Because they think duty and then they're transported right back to that moment where I obviously made a fool of myself and reverted into a 10-year-old. No, I don't think reverting into a 10-year-old is probably the best thing to say. I'm a perpetual 10-year-old. Now, in a less specific example of humor, in the opening minutes of class, just as Sharon will often do a poll to set the tone, I tell dad jokes to set the tone for the class. And I'll give you for free one of my dad jokes, one of my favorites. It's one of my go-tos. Did you hear about the radio antenna that got married? The ceremony wasn't fancy, but the reception was incredible. Now, lucky for you, I'm going to turn it back to Sharon.
Keith also texts me dad jokes. And sometimes I don't know if they're like legit or not. But yeah, the dad, and that's his thing. If I tried to tell a dad joke, that wouldn't fly, right? So you just kind of have to find your own humor and that sort of tone that works for you. So I'll
And
give you an example.
sorry, Sharon,
Yeah.
I have to tell you that the reason I text Sharon these dad jokes, and sometimes she gets many, many a day, is because I have been given a quota at home by my wife. I can tell 2. And so I'll say a couple jokes. She'll just turn to me without smiling and say, "That's your 2." And so I have to turn to texting them to Sharon. So.
Yeah, and then I pass them on to my kids, and you know, like the level of groan changes on the daily. So the other thing is, like, humor is not necessarily just our responsibility, right? If we set the tone for humor, then students meet that, right? And this is an actual legit screenshot from our class chat. This was just, I don't know, April of this year. And I think this was the best compliment I ever got in my whole life. I have never laughed so hard in a class before. I thought, I have arrived. I can retire now. I can just live off the fat of the land because my students have said they've never laughed so hard in a class before. I thought that was just, it was just awesome. You know, students take risks. They were doing, the context here is that they were doing presentations, and it was their project presentations. And, you know, like you could say, like, see them, they were saying like, this was just, whoa. And I'm so glad I was here to witness this. And this was just, it was wonderful. They were laughing with me, not at me, as far as I am aware. So we're going to do another fun participatory thing that kind of gets people involved here. This is a poll everywhere. Another tool. There's loads and loads of different tools that you can use for this kind of stuff. But I like to use poll everywhere. I like to mix them all up, right? Like straw poll, poll everywhere, whatever. You can use your cell phone for this, super easy, or you can just go online. But I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Now, y'all know that this is Drake. Okay. So this is, I'm so glad that everybody got 100% on this, because it's, Keith, you must have done Dolly Parton. That must have been you. Drake is a Toronto original. So we have a loyalty to Drake here in Canada. But I love to give, you know, when you're doing sort of a poll with students or whatever, or, you know, sometimes at the end of the class, I'll do, you know, how much did you understand about what we talked about today? So we'll do a little quiz or whatever that kind of gives students the opportunity to check in. Like, did you understand this concept? Did you, you know, what are the top things or whatever? So this is, you know, a poll. It doesn't have to be about Drake or about pop culture or whatever. But say I have 6 or 8 questions that give students sort of like a formative assessment, then I'll throw in like a freebie like this, like, so that everybody at least gets one right, you know? So it just kind of elevates the humor a little bit. And it also gives everybody a right answer. So that I find really helpful. Just, you know, when you give students quizzes like this and then they get it right, they're like, yes. So, you know, then they get the Drake, yes. So at least they got one. Yeah, I mean, usually they're getting more than that, but so I like to do these freebie questions that kind of just get people engaged and just kind of gives students a free right answer. So Keith is now going to talk about playfulness.
So hopefully by now with the first couple pillars, you can start to be able to see how, based on fun and humor, that playfulness is a natural element to be included in this model of ludic pedagogy. So whereas humor is an attitude, playfulness is a demeanor. And by that I mean and I'm stealing a quote here, that playfulness is an internal predisposition that is composed of creativity, curiosity, sense of humor, pleasure, and spontaneity. Now, it's playfulness on the part of the instructor that creates an environment that's more conducive to learning and having fun. So if you can cultivate this same sense of playfulness in your students, they're less likely to become discouraged, as Sharon was illustrating there with her Drake poll. They're going to have improved learning outcomes. Playfulness has been shown to alleviate boredom, to release tension, to prevent aggression, to heighten creativity, to encourage a sense of community. And this is perhaps the most exciting, there's a documented relationship between playfulness and higher grades. So how do you cultivate a sense of playfulness? You model it. Sharon.
Okay. Went the wrong direction. Okay. It's ranking time. We are going to rank fries. I just love fries. I can't even, but everybody has their favorites. So again, this is just a vapid sort of ranking thing, but this kind of concept where you get students using technology to rank different course concepts or rank different ideas, anything like, I mean, I used fries because this is sort of a universal thing that we can all kind of weigh in on. But whatever the context of your class, like, whether it's business or math or communication like me or any sort of science, you can use these kinds of tools to get students like back into this space. And it's just a little bit, it's just more fun. It's more playful. Or this could be one of your first intro questions, like at the beginning of class. So I'm going to go to
Sharon, the code for this Menti cannot be found, apparently.
all right, I'm going to
well, there's the code at the top.
Okay, 1 second. Now it should work. Is that working now?
Yes.
Okay. So just kind of a fun, ranking activity. And again, it doesn't have to be a fries thing. I just used this because it was a common denominator with our group. So, you could use anything that relates to your course content. And I find that it works really well when I use different tools in each class. Some people just use Poll Everywhere or just use the Woo Clap or just use Mentimeter. And I like to mix them up because it just keeps students more engaged, right? It just brings them straight into, into their phones, into a new site. And then it also kind of, I don't know, from a selfish perspective, shows that I kind of understand technology, and I'm not a relic on campus yet. So it looks like sweet potato fries are our winner today. And generally speaking, I find that sweet potato fries people are a healthier bunch. So I don't know, that's just my theory. So I'm going to go back to my slides here. So I just really love this quote from Amy Poehler that, taking risks and maybe falling on your face is okay. Like, what if I got here and that, like, I had a brief moment where that Mentimeter wasn't working, but it was just like, okay, I'll fix it. That's not a big deal. And it definitely, you know, using the technology adds another level of angst to teaching, online teaching, and so on. But you know, you got to put yourself out there. If you want your students to put themselves out there, we have to too. So a lot of the Ludic pedagogy is modeling being fun, modeling being playful. So Keith is going to talk about play.
Now, play is the last of the pillars in Ludic pedagogy, and it's the behavioral component of the model. Fun's the motivator, play's the behavior. In other words, play's the activity that's inspired by the intrinsic motivation of fun. Again, all in the service of learning. So it's the student's desire and the instructor's desire for fun that motivates the behavior of play. It's the engagement in the play that results in the learning. Now, I've already mentioned that play is often one of the first forms of learning that children experience. Unfortunately, though, it's less and less valued as a pedagogical tool as we age, right? Until there's little to no play left when we reach higher education. One of the biggest problems is that play has, in the past at least, frequently been seen to be incompatible with the idea of serious academic study. Now, more recently, there's been a movement in the area of gamification, which is one way to introduce more play into the classroom. This conference itself is very much gamified with its moot bucks, right? Games can raise motivation, and because games tend to require fewer cognitive resources, they increase learning. So gamification is formalized play with rules and so on. On the other end of the spectrum, however, you might be able to introduce unstructured play into your classroom. Play is no one thing. It's a whole set of behaviors that range from the highly structured to the completely unstructured. So I guess you could say that there are 50 shades of play. Sharon?
I'm going to rescue us from this pun. So I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm originally from Boston. Don't hold it against me. I'm not a Yankees fan. So I chose a baseball bucket for our question here. This question is an answer garden. You can use word clouds in whatever. You know, you can use it in that woo clap. You can use it in poll everywhere. You can use it, you know, and there's all different kinds of tools. I just chose to use answer garden here. This one asks you what's on your bucket list, because that's a pretty fun thing to discuss. I'm going to go right here. Awesome. Okay. Lots of vacations. Oh, see an SNL taping. What a great bucket list thing. Okay, now if you look at all of these bucket list things, you'll see that I would say almost all of them apply to having fun. Whoever said skydiving thinks that that's fun. Wanting to do an advanced trail, hiking trail, that would be fun. Hot air ballooning, that would be fun. Flying on a private jet. All of this stuff sounds fun, right? Traveling, going to Europe, eating good food. All of this stuff is playful. It's all play. Everybody is learning how to sail is playful, right? Going around the world well, I guess oceans would pose a problem to that, but you could always take a cruise. So yeah, like playing with grandkids, perfect example. That is play. like I could not have picked anything more perfect as an example here. So all this stuff looks like play. So all the things we really want involve play, right? So, you know, in terms of using play in class, you can use technology tools, back channels, Kahoot, any of the tools that I've used, and you can change them up. And you can do more, have more play by doing this. Like, and if you think about what are some of the things that you really want to do, all of this is play. Like even baking sourdough bread, that is play. It's play, right? You're playing around in your kitchen. You're messing around in your kitchen. Going to a Saturday Night Live taping, that sounds like play to me. So it really, this exercise really goes to show that play is something that we value a lot. And if we're not doing that in class, what kind of, you know, education are we giving these students that you've got to suffer through some things to get to others? And certainly that's true in some contexts, but you know, the more play we can have, I think the healthier our education system is going to be. So Keith's going to wrap up for us here. We're coming up on, well, for me, almost noon, but that's where I am.
Right. Now, all the tools that Sharon's been using here are free. I mean, there are paid versions of them, but I believe all the ones that you used today were the free versions. Is that right, Sharon?
That's correct.
Right. So that was a question that we had there during your piece. Okay. Now that we've looked at these 4 pillars of ludic pedagogy: fun, play, playfulness, and humor, it's also important to underscore an idea that we sort of bumped up against earlier, and that's the idea of authenticity for these elements. Sharon mentioned it. If it's not you coming through the show, then you're not going to connect with your audience or your students. This authenticity goes for all of the elements, for fun and play and humor. You need to be seen having the fun, right? That's the playfulness. Mm-hmm. So again, the 4 pillars of ludic pedagogy are fun, which is the motivation piece; humor, which is attitude; play, activity; and playfulness, disposition. All these elements are highly related. They're all cooperative. And so together, these elements can create a learning environment that hopefully I've been banging away on, not only help students to learn, but make learning more enjoyable. So rather than relegating the fun and the play to off-campus events, there are opportunities for us to employ these ludic ideas in order that students remember their education itself as an enjoyable experience. So in this model, students can boast increased retention of course material, a reduced cognitive load, and deeper learning. Both students and faculty can experience these pro-social bonds, reduced levels of stress, less boredom. Now, I'm going to revisit an idea that Sharon brought up in the introduction. Consider the bigger picture for the implications of this model. Around the world, studies have shown that employee engagement levels are falling, burnout levels are high. Imagine that if we instill this ludic mindset into students, and it starts to trickle out into the broader world where employers and employees start interacting with the ideas of fun and humor and play and playfulness in the workplace. Perhaps using this ludic pedagogy can not only improve what happens in our classrooms, but maybe we can start to instill this ludic mindset and the potential for creating a better, more fun world. Mm-hmm. Are we overselling the idea? Maybe. But if you've even now just given it a hint of consideration, I'd suggest that maybe we're not, in fact, overselling it. Mm-hmm. Sharon.
Awesome. So we go till the top of the hour. Is that right, Ryan, Dan? So we have a few minutes for questions if people are interested in that.
We actually have scheduled until 10:15. So
awesome.
We've got 15 minutes. So it looks like Sharon and Keith, can you guys see the Q&A? Do you want to manage that and just go for it? Or I can feed them to you if you want.
Yep.
Sure. I'm looking through and I don't see any questions. Apparently we are so awesome that I did answer the one about free versions, but please, if you have any questions, if you're looking for the resources, put it here and I'll make a note and I can send you out the journal articles we've relied on. Our resources are open and free. We're not trying to be proprietary with this stuff. We just want the world to be more fun.
Absolutely. I can put in, how about if I put in the link to our article in Inside Higher Ed?
Sure. Okay.
I
So-
always like to say that as a teacher, if you finish teaching your lesson and the class has no questions at all, that means you've taught them perfectly, right?
All right, we've got some here now. Stephen asks if there's books on this pedagogy. Stephen, not yet. There are, in fact, 2 in the works. If you are interested, send Sharon and I an email or a tweet or something, and we're going to be looking for some people to give us examples of how it's worked in their classrooms, if they've done this kind of thing, even not knowing that we're calling it Ludic Pedagogy, or if they want to write a chapter. We're going to be calling for those shortly. So Stephen, if you're interested in participating, just reach out to us. If you're just interested in reading, it's coming.
Yep.
Susan asks, what are your absolute favorite ones other than the tools that you've shared? Sharon's the expert in this. So Sharon, what tools?
Where is the question there? I was in chat, not in Q&A.
Well, I'm in Q&A.
Okay, I'm in the Q. Okay, can you repeat the question for me? I was just.
Susan's just asking, what are your absolute favorite tools other than the tools that you've shared?
Wow, absolute favorite tools. I also use, like my university subscribes to the Google Suite. So I like to get away from the university LMS when I can, because I kind of find that a little surveillance-y, that where it tells you when the students last logged in and how long they were in for. And I don't think that's really cool. I don't think that's awesome. So I have my students put stuff in Google Drive and then they can comment to each other, have conversations. And when I have large classes, I break the students up into like the awesome people group, the amazing people group, the fabulous people group, and so on. And then they create their little pods. And that's been really fun. The other thing I use a lot, which I was afraid it was either going to suck or be amazing, and it turned out being amazing, was Discord, which is kind of like Slack, sorta, but Discord was originally created for gamers, and that automatically gets students like, oh, okay, this isn't some dumb academic thing. So I use Discord to kind of push messages to students, reminders, and then, I don't know, every week I'll just post a question like, what are you watching on Netflix or something like that, just to get students engaged. So I would say Discord is probably one of my favorite things. And I've heard some universities don't want you to use anything but the LMS, but thankfully I can use whatever I want. So I would suggest kind of a communication tool like Discord, where students can ask each other questions. There's all kinds of channels that you can use, like Q&A, homework help, irrelevant. That's always the biggest one. Irrelevant is always the busiest chat, because they just post like, what's going on or what have you. So I would encourage, and again, it's free, so I would encourage using Discord too.
Okay. Michael asks, what kind of reactions do you get from your colleagues?
That's a great question.
Well, I can tell you that some of my best dad jokes come from one of my colleagues. John comes down the cubicle farm just about every day, regardless of what I'm doing, whether I'm on the phone or in a Zoom meeting, and he'll knock on the door of my doorway. I don't have an actual door of my cubicle, and he will tell me a joke. Like I say, regardless of what I'm doing. So John is very much on board with the idea. I've not gotten any blowback from my colleagues. That said, I don't necessarily advertise what I'm doing. It's just the way I teach.
Mhm.
Sharon?
Yeah, I think to Keith's point, like it's the way I teach is part of it. But there are always, we all have the stick in the mud colleagues, right? Who are going to be like, well, I would, but, and, you know, I gave a presentation on, you know, using the technology and whatever, and in my department. And the biggest response I got was, well, I would, but. And there's I mean, how big is your butt, right? Like there's a million butts you can have. So, and some people have really big butts when it comes to this kind of stuff. And, you know, what if the technology doesn't work? What if this, what if that? Well, you know what? If it doesn't, then you just model chilling out. But I have to acknowledge my privilege that I was just promoted to full professor. So I'm kind of at a point where I can do this without having to worry a whole lot about my job security. But I think when you make yourself indispensable, I think I would still do this even if I was adjunct or junior faculty, because when you make yourself indispensable, when you make yourself in demand, it's such a powerful tool for you to have students wanting you, right? And having this sense of I don't know, your own uniqueness. And I think, I mean, certainly I'm not going to lie, like legit, I know why you asked this question, because there are, you know, the old white men who are just like dismissive of somebody like me who wants to have fun. And I bring like, you know, dowels and all kinds of weird stuff to class and like, what are you doing? So I think you just gotta do your thing, right? And continue to make yourself indispensable.
Right. Annette asks, I realize this is stereotyping, but I work with a lot of suits. How do you bring ludic pedagogy into people's lives who have forgotten how to laugh and have fun even when working? I would suggest it's largely modeling, right? You come in on the first day, and if you start with your dad jokes, or you come in with that positive, playful attitude, and if you start with some of the kinds of things that Sharon does, right? With the what dog are you, or what hedgehog cake are you, or which version of Drake are you, whatever you do, right? That starts it. And maybe they're not going to break through a history of dourness right then and there, but it's a start, right? You can't change people overnight. But as playful, humorous people ourselves, we can't let those stick in the muds drag us down too. We have to continue to model that positive energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point about modeling that positive energy. And the suits question is awesome. Last week, I made a presentation to academic council, which is like Senate at my university. And it was like a committee of Senate. It was maybe, I don't know, 20 people or something, 25 people. And they were all suits. It was president, chancellor, like the chancellor was there, all these like, you know, the vice president of blah, blah, blah. Like it was everybody who has a big long title was there. And the topic, they wanted me to talk about blended learning and using technology in class. I was like, okay, I can do that. So instead of talking, I made a Kahoot. And like Kahoot is like an online game kind of thing. Again, it's free. So I made questions like, I don't know, I guess I had maybe 12 questions. And it was questions like, students love breakout rooms, true or false? Students never put their camera on, true or false? You know, just stuff about technology. And I was terrified. I was like, I don't even know how this is going to go. And, you know, the suits kind of go in and they expect to be on their phones and like multitasking, whatever. But once you do something that actually engages them, they're like, oh. So I went through the 12 questions in this Kahoot and everybody was laughing. And the cool thing about Kahoot is like it gives you who's winning, and like it gives you like a winner's platform kind of thing. And oddly, like the secretary to the Senate won, which was so cool because like the president and the provost and the chancellor, they all got like 20%. Because I snooped afterwards. I snooped at the rankings, and the bigwigs all sucked it. And the secretary to the to the academic council won. But I think just a little bit of shock value is sometimes kind of cool, you know? And I think if you own it, like I went in and I just kind of buried my fear. I was like, all right, I'm just going to own this space. I'm owning the space. This is academic council, and I'm just going to take this. And then at the end, everyone was just like, wow. Then there was supposed to be somebody else presenting after me, and he declined because he didn't want to. He said, I'm not going to go now, because he was going to talk about a light board or something. I don't know. So I think just owning that space and doing something radical, right? Because you can either decide to play their game or they're going to play your game. And when there's games involved, who's going to turn that down, right? So try it with the suits and then email me and let me know how it goes. I'm so curious.
Okay. You may notice that Sharon's answers are a little bit longer than mine. I just want to point out that I suffer from an economy of words, and that's the only reason. Katie asks, can you provide some additional examples of specific activities for a higher ed environment? Yes. Katie, in the past, I taught organizational behavior. I no longer teach it for a variety of reasons. Different story. But in the last few years that I was teaching it, I completely revamped the entire course into to exist in the context of the TV show The Office, right? The US version. So when we were talking about conflict, I would present the concepts of conflict, good conflict, bad conflict, types of conflict, whatever. And then we would watch an episode of The Office, not just for fun or for enjoyment or for humorousness, but to those elements were there. But then we would pull it apart, like identify the types of conflict and look at the different pieces there. So that's a specific example for specific kinds of course. I teach a negotiations course, and the entire course is built around role play. So we'll talk about a specific type of negotiation or type of context. And then I will, the week prior, email students their roles. And so they'll study up on their roles and they'll negotiate with each other, whether it's buying or selling a car, which is kind of boring. So I've revised it to buying or selling spaceships, right? They're aliens from different races. And so it brings in a cross-cultural element without, entering into any of those cultural difficulties by asking people to take on, cultural roles that they don't belong to, right? So it's these alien races. There's any number of ways that you can do it, really depending on the courses that you're teaching. Again, it needs to be relevant and it needs to be appropriate, but the sky's the limit, right? I would suggest if you have trouble, crowdsource it. Send it out to our tool of choice is Twitter, right? Send it out to Twitter. Sharon and I have found all sorts of resources and people talking about the same kinds of thing on Twitter. Right? Sharon, do you have anything to add to Katie here?
it would obviously be discipline specific, right? But I find when students use social media, that just lights them up, right? So I teach a public speaking class, and it's a first year class. Nobody wants to take it, even if they don't know me. They're like, I'm not taking that, I'd rather die. And that's not a joke. Like, people fear death less than they fear public speaking, according to studies. So nobody wants to do this class, and they're all like 18, and they're like, talk about, losing their minds. So they all come in, I don't know them, they don't know each other. So I give everybody an index card, totally old school. I ask them to write their name, and they don't know what's happening, like just their name and their social media accounts. Like, what do they do on like, what's their Instagram account? What's their Snapchat? What's their Visco? What's their Twitter? Whatever else they're doing. And then I collect them, and I keep them in order, like all the first row, all the second row, so I know who's kind of sitting next to each other. And then I just save them, because then they forget about them. At the end of class, I hand out an index card to a different person. Like, I'll pick someone in the front row, and I'll give that person's index card to a person in the back. And then, so they have partners, right? So Joe and Susie are partners, and they each get each other's index cards. I say, okay, so for class next week, your job is to stalk legally your partner on social media. And they're all like, oh my God, because now instantly they're like, oh my God, I have to take all these selfies down or whatever. And it's like endorsed creeping, right? And it's so funny. Everybody is laughing. Everyone is like, oh my God. And I say, look, don't text each other and be like, okay, what do you want me to say? That is a lesson about identity and curating. How do you curate your online identity, and what is your online identity? Is your curated online identity, does that match who you really are when you're sitting in the front of class? So, I mean, these are first year students, and identity is a really important introductory concept in terms of social media, filtering, curating, that kind of thing. And it's just hilarious. It's hilarious. And what I do is I bring chairs in from the student lounge. And so we do it kind of like Ellen DeGeneres style, so that they're not like standing at the front going, hi, this is Keith. Keith lives in Manitoba, so I have them sit in chairs, and they're just kind of a little bit more casual. So I think using social media is always really fun, getting them to use hashtags, stuff like that.
Okay, I see it's after time, but I'm willing to stay and answer more questions. The powers that be, Ryan, Dan, what do you want us to do?
Well, we always end exactly on time with everything that we do. Mm-hmm. And we always show up exactly on time. So I'm still distributing moot coins and stuff for question and answer. So you guys just rock it. First of all, this is awesome. So much fun. Thank you for coming. And our next event's not until 11. So as far as I'm concerned, we can do whatever we want to. Dan, does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. We should probably wrap it up here in like 5 or 10 minutes or so. We've got some vendor sessions to go on. But people can connect with Sharon and Keith over Twitter. I'm sure they're happy to answer questions or engage that way.
Yeah, I've been answering some questions here. I've been saying, if you want to reach out to us via email or Twitter, please, anytime, right? We're always happy to hear what other people are doing. Please, the invite's open to everybody.
I just have one question. Did you guys come up with this pedagogy? Is this something that you just...
Yes and no.
Okay.
That's a complex question with a complex answer.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you've got other questions that you need to answer. So sorry.
I'll give you the Coles notes. The term existed, but it hadn't taken off in any sort of way, right? So we've sort of co-opted the term, and we've attached existing research to it. What we've done is emptied the puzzle box out on the table, and we're just putting things together.
Great. Awesome. So is there another question that you think?
Gary asked, how do you encounter, or sorry, do you encounter a lot of stick in the mud students? They exist. When I was teaching one of those, the office, oh, my background's the office, look at that. The office OB classes, I had one student who came to me about halfway through the course and said, I hate this show, it's vulgar. Which is fair, right? I mean, we can't make people enjoy the same things that we enjoy. And I acknowledged that. I said, I'm sorry you're not finding it fun or enjoyable. However, really all we're using it is as a case study. I can hand you paper cases from, you know, a textbook, but would you rather watch a half-hour, 22-minute case, or would you rather read a case? And she thought about it and said, okay, that's fair. It's just a video case. And she reframed it that way. And though it wasn't fun for her, it was more fun than reading a paper case.
Yep.
So again, a lot of these things often come back to framing.
Mhm.
Sharon?
Yeah. I think I will leave it with you. We're not at a dearth of words. I'm looking
An
in
economy of words.
economy of words. See, I don't know. I had $100 word and you had a $75 word. Let's see. I want to thank Shalimar for saying that this is my favorite keynote of all time, and it changed my life.
I took a picture of that.
I
If-
know
I hope
That's
that
one
you
in my
guys.
CV.
I hope that you guys can join us for the social hours on congregate.live, where there are links inside the Moodle. If you guys, you know, if anybody's having trouble finding that, please just message me or email me. I'll be happy to send it your way. For now, we're going to go to the sponsor session. So I'm going to put this in the chat just so everybody can get to it easily. So let me just open that up. And
I want to thank you guys for being here. This fits perfectly with what we're about. And I think with our community of being open source learners, engaged students, and make it fun. And so that's, hopefully we can get you guys here next year.
Oh, it's in my calendar, man.
Well, thanks for the invite. This has been a lot of fun.
So
Really?
everybody, thanks for your attendance and participation. We've put the link to Congregate Live for the vendor show. Come in and talk to the vendors. And I'd invite Keith and Sharon, if you guys want to come and sit at the table, you can have face-to-face conversations with folks. I know the webinar keeps us a little bit, you know, disconnected, but if you want to join and hang out, that'd be great. So,
Sure.
Dan, anything else?
Nope, that should do it. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks a lot. See you guys in Congregate.
You bet.
Okay.